Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Rabia Mahmood and welcome back to the very last lecture of this semester, lecture number 32, and the title and the things that we are going to discuss are the few concerns of the course. I have actually designed this today's lecture about a few things that I wanted to discuss regarding language. Although the course is about history of English language, we have already gone through so many of the details. In our previous lecture, we have looked at one aspect of the concerns, that was linguistics, and today we are again going to look at some of the general concerns of the overall course. And again, the main topic or the main focus of today's lecture would be language, and it is I am going to look at and give you a very detailed study of the complexity of the language. Although I remember that in our second lecture we have already have a sufficient background of language. We have looked at what language is, what are its characteristics, how does it work, and the things like that. But there were a few more things that I really wanted to share it with you. So I have designed today's lecture on a bit lighter note. It's not going to be a very thick one as we have already done in our previous lectures. It is going to be a little lighter one and focusing more on language. So let's start today's lecture. The first thing that again the phenomena that comes to our mind, what is language, that I've given I really found very interesting this picture. This picture has got different samples of the languages that are written. It has got some symbols as well. So what does it refer to? What is language? Is language is only the one that is Latin, or is Italiano, or is it Zuban Farsi, or this actually the symbol that is there? What is this? Or this symbol? What is this? Language is really complex. We have been looking at the history, we have been looking at the evolution of language, that how did it evolved in different periods of the time. But today we are going to just it's a kind of I had in my mind that if there would be some questions regarding language, I would like to solve them up in our today's last lecture of this semester. Definitions formulated by some linguists. While I was talking about language, as I have shown you the picture, and we could not actually come to one conclusion. We kept on thinking that what language is. Does it need sounds? It needs words? Is it about symbols? Or what it is? So let's just have a look at some of the descriptions, some of the definitions that were given by some world-renowned linguists. Let's see that what these definitions are and what do they have got to tell to us. There is a person, Traeger and Bloch. They say, a language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols by means of which a social group cooperates. So many things in one definition. It's a system of arbitrary vocal symbols. Arbitrary, we have already discussed this aspect. We are saying it's a symbol of arbitrary vocal and symbols, the three main things. It is arbitrary, language is about arbitrary symbols. These are the vocal symbols, the vocal symbols that relate to voice, and they are by means of which a social group cooperates, by means of which, by the use of which a social group, a group is going to cooperate with each other. Noam Chomsky in 1957 he said, language is a set of finite numbers of sentences. It's a set of finite number of sentences, each finite in length and constructed out of a finite set of elements. He's talking about language in his own terms. Halliday, a language is a system of meaning, a semiotic system. It's a system of meaning. He's looking at meaning. One is looking at the vocal symbols. What is the third one doing? The third one is looking at the set of finite numbers of sentences. Let's see what does Argin say. Language is a natural means to enable communication among people. It's a natural, his focus is on natural means to enable communication among people, a living entity that it has its own peculiar laws, by means of which alone can it develop. It's a system of contracts whose foundation was laid in times unknown, and a social institution interwoven with the sounds. See that how many things again are described about the language. So natural means to enable communication. It enables communication. So true. We know it. Where? Among the people, among different kind of people, among a community. It's a living entity. It's something that is live. He's giving it, he's making it live. He's giving it the qualities of something that is live. It's a living entity. It has its own peculiar laws. It has its own rules. It has its own theoretical framework. It has its own functions. It is a social institution interwoven with the sounds. Sapir, the same person who gave Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Sapir gave a more plausible definition about human language by stating that language is purely human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas. It means, if Sapir is saying that language is purely human, it means the non-human, they are the rest of the people, the rest of the creatures, the animals, the insects, don't they communicate with each other? We have looked at bees do communicate, chimpanzees do communicate with each other. What is it? Sapir is just looking at this from one perspective. It's purely human and it is non-instinctive method of communicating ideas, emotions and desires by means of a system of voluntarily produced symbols. How are human beings communicating? By means of a system of voluntarily produced symbols. Voluntarily produced symbols that they intentionally would want to produce and use different kind of symbols. David Crystal in 1989 says, the discussion may be summarized by referring to the language as human vocal noise. Again, the emphasis on the vocal noise. Used systematically and conventionally. Now the use is systematic. Although it's more about the vocal sounds, but the use would be systematic one and conventionally. A community for the purpose of communication. Hobbes, let's see that what does Hobbes say? In 1990, Hobbes says language is a form of communication by means of system of symbols principally transmitted by the vocal sounds. Again, one of the same thing. It is a symbol, it's a sound system that is being transferred by the use of the vocal sounds. Let's see, when Webster came and he gave his New World Dictionary and he talked about language, he said that it's a human speech. The ability to communicate by this means, this is the ability to communicate. It's a system of the vocal sounds and the combination of such sounds to which meaning is attributed, used for the expression or the communication of the thoughts and feelings. It's a system of the sounds. The sounds are associated with some specific meanings and then they are used for the communication. The written representation of such a system is communication or a language. He further says any means of expressing or communicating as gestures, signs or animal sounds. It's a special set of symbols, letters, numeral, rules. It's a special set of symbols, letters, numerals and rules used for the transformation of information as in the computer. If we are talking about language, it's a special set of the symbols that is used. Within the computer, there are different symbols that are used. So what would be a generally accepted definition of language? A generally accepted definition of a language, according to me, would be language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols used for human communication. Language is what? It's a system. It's not one single thing. It's a complete system. A phenomena is going on. System of what? Of arbitrary. Firstly, they're arbitrary. There is no relationship. There's something that cannot be touched. What? Vocal. They're vocal as well. They're not written perhaps. They're vocal. What? They're the symbols. Used for human. They are used for what? For human communication. So language is that thing. There are some, if we are trying to understand the questions, definition, we have certain questions in our mind. That why is language regarded as a system? Why it is arbitrary? Why it is vocal? Why does it use symbols? And why human only? And why a communication? See that how many things are there in this definition of a language. We are uniquely language users. We just keep thinking about these questions and perhaps we don't get the answers. We are uniquely language users. Others, it was said that it is human quality. It means that human beings, that the animals don't communicate. They do communicate. But we use language. We can separate our vocalization from a given situation. Cats only arc their back in the appropriate situations. We can lie. Animals only report. We can speculate. Animals are bad at counterfactuals. See the comparison of human beings and the rest of the thing. We can separate our vocalization from a given situation. Cats only arc their back if their back is going to be arched. We can do so many things in different situations. We can keep lying the things, but animals can only report the things. We can speculate. Animals are bad at counterfactuals. Then comes the very important aspect that we have not discussed up till now regarding language, functions of language. Because in the history of English language, it was really very, very important to tell you about the functions as well. That what are the general functions of a language, what different linguists say about these functions of language. What do you think are the functions of a language? By the way, there is one question from you. What do you think that there are the functions of the language? What can be the functions of language? What? One question, one answer that comes to perhaps to talk to others, to inform, or what? To express, to give information. What else? Keep thinking about the functions of language and then we'll come back to this question. Elements of communication, according to Jacobson in 1960 he gave his model about that. He said that there are different elements of communication that are needed, that are there in the process of communication. For example, the one is context. The first important on the top is that context. Context is what? The background. The things that are going on towards the back. Then comes addresser. Addresser is important. Who is speaking or the speaker? He has message, he or she has message. Message is the main information. It goes to addressee. Okay, addressee is the receiver. This is the, we can say addresser is the sender. This is the receiver of information. Message is what? Message is the main information. What other things are important in the elements of communication? The context, As context is important, the background of the background knowledge or the overall things that going on, they are important. So the context is also important. Whatever the code is going on, that is also important. So these were different elements that were described by Jacobson. Beta functions of language. Actually, while we were looking at the functions of language, within that we have firstly described that what are the elements of communication, because all the definitions of language that we have seen, they agree on one point, that language is what? Language is a means of communication. We have looked at the components of communication. Now we are going to look at the functions of language. Functions of language, another very, very important field. We must know that what are the functions of a language, and what different people say. While I was talking about Mac Halliday, and I was saying that he is a very famous, popular Australian linguist who has worked extensively in the field of linguistics. He has also given the concept of systemic functional grammar. Here is the Halliday's model of the functions that describes the functions of language. He says that there are the three meta functions of language. Meta, the broader levels, they are the three meta functions of language, the three main functions. The first one is ideational. Second is interpersonal. Contextual. The three functions that are given by Halliday, and Halliday says that there are three main functions: ideational, interpersonal, and contextual. Ideational function is what? Ideational is about the constructs a model of experience and constructs logical relations through transitive system, linguistic constructionism. Ideational is about ideas, about thinkings. It constructs a model of experience. He says that this function of communication, this function of language, it constructs a model of experience and constructs logical relations through transitive systems, as well as linguistic constructionism. The second is interpersonal function of language, that language enacts social things. Language try to act some social aspects, enact some social relationships. For example, through mood and modality. Yes, language is trying to enact, language is trying to present some relationships. Third is a contextual or the textual function of communication or the language. It creates relevance to the context through coherence and cohesion. Relevance to the context means whatever is written, whatever is being spoken, wherever the language is being used, the contextual function would refer it to the context, to the background knowledge of that. So here arises a very important thing, that is systemic functional linguistics, that looks at the hidden systems and the functions of language, and that tries to identify, that tries to look at the role of language in the meaning making. Actually, there is one important thing about systemic functional language, functional linguistics. It is a linguistics that studies systematically the systems and the functions of language. And what does it do? It tries to explore the meanings It tries to explore the meanings in the language. So when the meanings are being explored, that is known as systemic functional linguistics. These are a few more words about Halliday. He is the founder of systemic functional linguistics. He has been studied at Beijing, as well as he did his doctorate from Cambridge University. And now some summary of the functions of the language, some more functions. Those three functions, the three meta functions that were given by Halliday. Now we are moving on to some general and some more easier functions of language. The first function is that of informative. Yes, we all know that what is the function of language. The function of language is to inform the things. Language serves an informative function when it is used to tell what the speaker believes, to give information about the facts or to the reasons things out. Yes, the first function that we are looking at in the language is that of informative function. Informative function, language serves an informative function when it is used to tell what the speaker believes. When language is used to tell about the beliefs of one's person, so we can say that this is the function of the language is informative function is being performed right now by the use of declarative sentences. For example, if I declare that I have been passed from this semester, this is declarative sentence, and this is a kind of information. I am giving information to the rest of the people that I have passed that exam. So this was the first function of language. Second is interrogative. When language is used to get information from the others, it serves an interrogative function. We are actually, when we are trying to interrogate, when we are trying to ask, we are trying to know that what does the language mean, what is the main, we are actually trying to ask, we are trying to see that what is some, if we wanted to know about something, we are trying to investigate, trying to research. That is again another function of language. And how do we do it? Through questions that expects answers. For example, if I use one word that where did you come from? This is a question. It requires one answer. Perhaps the other person is going to answer that I am from fla fla fla. So what function the language is performing here? The language is performing interrogative function, where they are being curious, where they are trying to know about certain things, trying to get an idea of certain things. The third is the interpersonal function. It was also there in Halliday when he talked about the interpersonal functions of language, that language talks about the two people. It is used to elaborate, to tell about the relationship between the two people. So interpersonal function is what? Language serves an interpersonal function when it is used to establish and maintain their status in a society. Interpersonal language serves as an interpersonal function when it is used to establish and maintain their status in the society. When we are trying to do something with which we are trying to establish our status in the society, so it means that what function language is performing? Language is performing some interpersonal function. There are 5 subcategories of the interpersonal functions. The first one is performative, directive, emotive, expressive, and emphatic. These are the 5 subcategories of interpersonal functions. Performatives, the use of language to do things, to perform actions through quite formal and even ritualized language. For example, if there is one sentence that is written, I am just writing it down. I declare the convocation Open. Just go through the sentence. I declare the convocation open. What does it mean? It means when if somebody utters this sentence in that specific setting, in that specific context, what will happen? The convocation would get open. The convocation will get start. I declare the convocation open. The convocation would get start. It would get open. So this is the performative, where you are actually performing the things by using language. Next is directive. Directives mean giving directions. When language is used to get the hearer do something, it serves the directive functions. Yes, when in the language you are giving some kind of directions, you want the hearer, the listener, to do something. It means that the language is performing directive functions. And what kind of sentences? Mostly imperative sentences are there in these kind of things. Let me write down one sentence and you would get to know that what is it. For example, the sentence is polish the shoes. Imperative, ordering, polish the shoes. I am giving directions. This is directive function of the language, where I am giving directions perhaps to some other body to go and polish the shoes. Emotive, the use of language to create certain feelings in the hearer. Emotive are those functions of language where language is actually connected to the emotional aspect, to the emotional stance of the hearer, where we are trying to convey some kind of feelings. What do we do? Through jokes, through advertising, and through propaganda. We are actually trying to touch the feelings of the people, and then we are trying to make them emotional. So what we are doing, we are doing actually the emotive. We are using language for the emotive function. Let me give you a very good example. For example, if there are, you would have noticed that there are so many ads that go on the TV. If there is one motto, घी फ्लाद घी नाम है एतमाद का. Yes, this thing like naam hai etamad ka, what is this? Like they are actually trying to play with the emotive aspect of the audiences by using this kind of language. Means if you are buying this product, so it is reliable, you can believe in it, that it is all right, that it would do good for you. This ये product है, नाम है एतमाद का. So this is, in this context, the language that is being used, this is an emotive aspect, this is an emotive function of the language that is being performed. Then the expressive functions, expressive, the very word tells, the very that the use of the language to reveal something about the feelings and the attitudes of the speaker. You are using the language to express your feelings about something. And what kind of sentences could be there? Through exclamations, where you are exclamatory sentences, and as we used to use. For example, as perhaps you may, some of you may say, wow, wow, the semester is over. Wow, the semester is over. This is exclamation, and this is exclamation mark. The word wow shows your feeling that you are expressing. It shows your joy, that you are overjoyed. So what kind of function is being performed by using language over here? It is actually the expressive function of the language, where you are expressing certain things about it. Sometimes, but what happens actually these days, the things have changed so much. Perhaps you don't write the complete sentences, as I told you earlier in my lecture, that the current status of English, what do you feel they have become the status updates rather than some other things? Your arguments have become your phone calls, and the relationships are no more than textings. So the things have changed, they are changing. What they do actually, sometimes the expressive functions, if I would do, I would have this. What is this? What is the function being performed about language? That it seems it's a smiley, it seems that I'm happy. It is again the expressive function of language. If there is another, and it is again, it shows something else. So expressive function of language, it is not only language, as we talked earlier in the, we have looked at that language is not only about the written words, it's more of the speech, it's about the vocal symbols, it's about the symbols, it's about the signs. So these are different signs that are performing different functions. These are the signs that shows different attitudes, expresses the different feelings of human beings. Then fatigue, another function. Fatigue is the use of language to establish an atmosphere or maintaining social contact. The use of language where you are trying to establish an atmosphere, you are trying to be social, you are trying to create some kind of social contact, you are trying to maintain the social contacts. So in that sense, in that scenario, we say that language is performing fatigue function. For example, greetings, farewells and comments on the weather, where we are trying to if somebody say look, if there is this one sentence, what is this? Hello, how's you doing? You're greeting somebody, you're asking him. So what is the function in this sentence? The function is fatigue. We are saying that language is performing fatigue function, because this is a kind of where you just pass by some person and you say hello, how are you doing, how are you, and the things, the words like that. You are just creating, you are maintaining a social decorum. So you are maintaining some social contacts. You are just greeting some other persons. So this is what? This is a fatigue aspect of the language, a fatigue function of the language that language is performing. Another very, very important function of language that we see here is that of recreational function. The use of language for the sheer joy of using it. You are using the language for the sheer joy of using it. You are writing the things because you are enjoying. You are reading the things because you are enjoying. You are listening to the music because you are enjoying. You are reading the material because you are just enjoying. You are speaking, you're talking to somebody because you are enjoying. So that in all these cases, what you are doing, you are using language. And what could be the purpose? The purpose is recreational one, where you trying to recreate, you are trying to entertain yourself, you are doing just for that thing. For example, baby is babbling. A baby who babbles, a baby who have some giggles, the laughters of the babies, that are what? That is recreational function of the language. You are writing down poetry, you are in some good mood, you are writing down the poetry and you are using the language, so that is what a recreational function of language. As you are in a good mood, you want to have some kind of conversation with your friend, so you start sending messages and texting with the other person. You start chatting. What is that? You are using language, so you are using language. What is that? That is the recreational purpose of the language. I hope that this function is clear. There is metalingual function as well. Metalingual. This word is a combination of two things. It is meta and it is lingual. Meta, above, lingual, above the level of language, something that goes beyond. The use of language to talk about the language itself, where you are language within the language, we can say. We are talking about language for the sake of language. This makes language infinitely self-reflexive. Self-reflexive. We are talking about the language as right now we are using language. I am explaining the language. I'm talking about the language. I'm using the language to talk about the language. This is language within the language. That is metalingual. We human beings can talk about talk and think about think, and thus only humans can ask what it means to communicate, to think, to be human. Yes, we can talk about talk, we can think about think. I hope that these two interesting ideas are clear. We can talk about talk. Yesterday, I met with my colleague. I had some kind of conversation, and in the very next day, I'm telling about that conversation of my colleague. I'm talking about that specific talk to you. I'm thinking about one specific thought, that is, I'm having that now. So this is metalingual function of language. Some parts of language, we have already gone through different levels of language, but now we are going to look at just the parts, the apparent parts that we see in a language. The language is composed of phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics. This is grammar. Grammar is further divided into phonology, morphology, phonology, rule pertaining to the sound systems. Phonology is what? Rules pertaining to the sound system. Morphology is what? Rules governing the word structures. Syntax is what? Rules governing the structure of the sentence. Semantics is what? Rules concerning the meanings. So all these things make up grammar, and grammar make up a language. Phonological rules, let's see what they are quickly. A quick recapitulation of phonological rules. Language consists of a fairly small set of the sounds. Yes, we know phonemes. There are about 40 in English, 40 or 44, it ranges. In English, most have no meanings in themselves. Rather, we string them together to form meaningful bits and pieces. Yes, rule, for example, an English word can end but not begin with an ing sound. Look at one example, that a very good example. An English word can end with ing sound, it cannot start. For example, sing, ring, king. Can you think of any word that starts with the ing sound? Perhaps no. And if you know, kindly let me know. Morphology. Language is made of the morphemes. Many are words. Lexicon is a dictionary of the words. Papers has two morphemes. Papers. Paper. Papers. Paper and sir. These are the two morphemes in this word. 3 million words in English. About 200,000 words in common use today. There are syntactic rules. Rules that enable us to combine morphemes into sentences. Bridge between sounds and meanings. Syntactic rules are what? Syntactic rules enables us to combine morphemes into sentences, to combine these different morphemes into the sentences. The bridge between sounds and meaning, a bridge between the sound what we are uttering and the meaning that it has got. When children put words together, they are following syntactic rules about how morphemes are put together. Yes, we know. When children put words together, they are following syntactic rules. For example, when a baby starts thinking, when a baby starts speaking, initially would say mama, pani, like that baby would be uttering words individually. Pani, pani, pani means when he or she needs, the baby needs water. But later on, firstly, pani, pani chahiye, ya pani, like he would use the two words perhaps, but later on he would, with the passage of time, realize that these are the correct syntactic structure is this one. So he would start forming the correct syntactic structure later on in his life. Semantics. Semantics is what? Semantics is the study of meanings. We have discussed one concept of Ferdinand de Saussure while we were discussing about signifier, and the second concept was signified. We were discussing about these two concepts, signifiers and signifieds. Signifier is the word portion. Signified is what? The object. There is arbitrariness of the sign. He says that what is a sign? A sign is this thing. According to Ferdinand de Saussure, a sign is this. That has signifier and signified. This is he regarded as that this is a sign. He regarded this thing as a sign, a signifier and a signified. Sounds of the words bear no relationship to the meanings except for the onomatopic sounds. There is no relationship between the sound and the meanings. In philosophy, we often distinguish between denotation and the connotation. While we talk about semantics, we are actually looking at the meanings, and we have different combinations of the words in semantics. We sometimes talk about the denotations. We sometimes talk about the connotations. Denotations are the dictionary meanings of the words. Connotations are the conceptual meanings of the words. Denotation, the dictionary meanings. Connotations are the conceptual meanings of the words. Fine. So when we study all these things, we are saying that we study semantics, and that is one part of it. Semantics follows syntax. It leads towards the syntax. The people talked over the noise. There are the two syntactical interpretations. Syntax, as you know, that is grammar. There are the two syntactical interpretations. The first one, the people talked over what? The noise. Over is a preposition. Yes, we know. The people talked over the noise. Yes. The people talked over the noise. If we divide it this way, the people talked over the noise. What is this over? Over is then, it's a particle that is used with this talked. The people talked over the noise. Whereas in the first interpretation, we can say, first grammatical structure, we can say that it is referring to this thing. This is particle. Semantics follows syntax. Some other things about semantic follows syntax. A single sentence can correspond to two propositions. A single sentence, one single sentence can correspond to two prepositions, each of which has a distinctive syntactic and logical structure, hence a different cognitive representations. Evidence that meaning is assigned to the syntactic structure rather than to words and the sentences. The meaning is assigned to what? Syntactic structures, to the grammatical structures rather than to the words and the sentences. So grammar, how do we know that one sentence is grammatical and the other is not? For example, the first sentence, Amy likes Stan. Think likes I, Stan that Amy. Cannot be that we have learned each instance individually. Sentences are infinite where it is not. Yes, we can say that the first sentence, Amy likes Stan, this is a grammatical sentence. Why? Because it has a proper grammatical structure. It has subject, verb and object, whereas the other sentence, it is nothing but the random combination of the words. Some interesting facts about the language regarding the structure, that regarding the functions that we were discussing. The numbers of the sentences are infinite. Yeah, it is true. We have, although every human being has limited number of vocabulary items, limited number of the sentences, yet the sentences that they are going to from that specific bank, they are infinite. They can be numerous. We are able to distinguish grammatical from the ungrammatical sentences. Yes, we are able to recognize truncated sentences, stopped, that are missing nouns. We are also able to ambiguous sentences, and you saw the girl with the binoculars. Yes, we are also able to look at these things. We can create sentences that paraphrase each other. Yes, it is also true. Once when we are talking about the infinity of the sentences, then we are also then we can see that we can paraphrase. We can only by paraphrasing one sentence we can have so many of the sentences. Some features of the language. The important features that all human beings have in common, not solely English. These were given by Charles Hockett. Although that we have looked and discussed these features in our lecture, I'm not going to go into the detail. I'll be just to give you a single idea that these were given by Charles Hockett, and the defining features of language were use of sound signals, arbitrariness, need for learning, duality of the patterns, displacement, creativity, patterning, and structure dependence. Some minor features of the language. First one, language reveals patterns of how mind works. A very good debate that we had once in our lecture, that we said that language reveals patterns of how mind works. Means it is going to, whatever we speak, whatever we write, it would be a reference to the working of our mind. Language is the means for mental and social development. Yeah, it is. Language is a property of the individual as well of the society. It is a property of the individual because the language that I have, it is my property. It is the property of the society as well, because actually one society that is identified by the language that it possesses. We have as many languages and we have so many identities. We say that they are Punjabis because Punjabi is their language. We say they are Pashtos, they are Balochis, they are Sindhis, they are Saraikis, they are Potwaris. What are these actually? These are the languages, and the languages are the representation of one culture and the society of its speakers. Language is a predictor of the social identity. It predicts, it tells of your social identity. The way I speak, the language that I use, it would be a representation of my social identity as well. Language is a predictor of social identity. Yeah, so true. Language is used for the cultural preservation and transmission. Language is used for the cultural preservation. Whatever you want to preserve in one society, in one culture, you would do it by preserving the language. If there is a book that is very, very sacred to our heart, we are going to preserve it for the upcoming generations. We are going to transfer it to the upcoming generations. What we do, we will preserve the language and then we'll pass it on. Language can be used by some to exert their power over others. So true. Language is actually, the concept of power is related to language. It can be used to exert their power over others. The first, let me start telling you by the concept of power that prevails on micro level in one nation. The language, the one who is in power would use a different kind of language. For example, just look at a very minor aspect, a classroom aspect, where the teacher is in power, and the language the teacher is using, that would show, that would exert the power, because teacher itself is in powerful position. The language that a teacher can order the students, so that shows power, that exerts power. Now going beyond, look at the for example, as we are saying that America is a dominant power, it's a powerful country, it is dominating. A very, very good representation of its domination is that English language is also in domination. It is dominating the rest of the world. It is exerting its power. The English language is exerting its power on the rest of the languages. We have started saying that English is actually a language of prestige. It means if we are regarding one language as prestigious language, it means that we are derogating the other language. We are hating our own national languages. No, that's really very, very bad. While we have talked about linguistics, you must be clear that linguistics pay equal respect, equal honor to all the languages of the world. No language is bad, no language is derogatory, no language is stigmatized. Rather, every language has its own prestige, and that must be given, the due prestige and due honor must be given to that specific language. And this is how we can say that language can be used by some to exert their power over others. We can use the language to exert our power over others. The direction of the changes in language is not predictable. Yes, language is not monolithic but varied. It exhibits variations. Yeah, you know that it is not monolith. It is not one single phenomena. It has so many variations. Self-talk can be regarded as a form of language. If I am talking to myself, as let me give you a good example, as I have been giving you, perhaps in your some other course, in the course on drama, you will be studying Shakespeare, and in Shakespeare you would have noticed one very important element. What is that element? That element is about soliloquies, where the main hero, the protagonist, starts talking to himself. He says, as a very, very famous lines I remember right now, "To be or not to be, that's the question." A very famous soliloquy of Shakespeare. To be or not to be, that's the question. It is better to follow the outrageous fortunes, or I've forgotten actually the words right now. The first line was, "To be or not to be, that's the question." A very famous soliloquy. Then that is also a form of self-talk. That is also a form of language. We talk in our minds, in our speeches there, using language for the thinking. You know, when we think, we have the language. And one very good trick, when it is said that you need to learn English language, there is one good trick. It is said that once you start thinking in that specific language, you start speaking in that language. Once you will start thinking in English language, you will be extraordinary fluent person, fluent speaker of English language. This is my promise. Just try it. We cannot help but to process and understand what we hear. Language, unless recorded, flies away the moment we speak it. Yes, if it is not recorded, it would just fly away, it would just vanish. That's why the written record were given more importance over the spoken. All the languages have the same potential for the development. Language facilitates abstract thought, that is thinking. Language is adaptable and flexible to accommodate new communicative needs. If all the functions that I have elaborated of the language, and let's say if I am performing some function that does not fall under those categories, language would itself adapt to that specific communicative function. There must not be those categories, but still it can adapt itself to those categories. There are the 3 Ds of language, dimensions of language as used in the oral communications. There are the 3 Ds. The first one is form, sound, word, sentence. Meanings, what does it mean? Use, where, when, with who to use it appropriate. Knowledge of a language. If you say that you know English, if you have the knowledge of a language, these are actually some of the criterias. Just try to see that, do you know? Identify individual sounds correctly. Can you identify the sounds? Identify. Knowing the combination of the sounds, do you know? For example, bag is permitted, that bag is not permitted. Knowing the formation and the division of the words clearly, do you know that? Combination of the words at the sentence level. Decoding of all the above system, understanding the meanings of the words, phrases and sentences. Using language in the communicative context. If you know all these things, and if you can do all these things, so it means that you have the knowledge of language, you know English. Knowing a language means having moderate level of speaking and listening skills, and also expressing ideas in the written mode. You are illiterate if you cannot convert your speech into writing. For literacy, for knowing, you must be able to speak and then to write, to convert your speech into writing. Uses of language in everyday life. Normal conversations uses 4,000 to 5,000 words an hour. A radio talk sometimes would use 8,000 to 9,000 words per hour. A person reading at a normal speed covers 14,000 to 15,000 words per hour. And per day, the total could be a high 1 lakh. See, what a great and huge use of words is there per day. Therefore, we can say the use of language is an integral part of human being, and we cannot exist without it. So with this, we'll come towards the end of today's lecture, and as well as the end of our semester. In this lecture, firstly, I'll be giving you a brief review of what we have done today. Analysis of the definitions of language we have looked. We have tried to explore the functions of language. We have looked at some parts of the languages that were there, some features of the languages, we have looked at what are the criteria when we say that we are knowledgeable in that language. We have looked at the use of everyday language, and with this I would give you just a brief overview of the course, and I hope that you would have really enjoyed this thing. A brief overview of the course. Actually, as all of you know, that the course title was ENG 404, and it started with, and the title of the course is History of English Language, and within these 32 lectures we have started by looking step by step, moving from one thing to the other. We initiated our course with the one single concept of language. We ended our course on the concept of language, because this is what is the main concern of our thing. Within these different concepts, we have actually what else we have done. We have looked at the language. We have started looking at the characteristics of language. Then we moved on to the origins of language. Then we moved on to the history. The history was divided into prehistorical events, then the primitive history, then the old English period was there, then there was Middle English period, then after that Middle English period there was within Within Middle English period, there were so many conquests that were going on. There were so many shifts that were coming in English language. After the Middle English period, we moved on to the Modern English period, and we said that the Modern English period is divided into two main streams. The first one was Early Modern English period, and the second was Later Modern English period. After that, we looked at the aftermaths of certain things. We came towards the Modern English period overall as well. We have looked at the varieties of English. When we were discussing the concept of varieties of English, we also looked at the concept of world Englishes. We have not only explored in detail the world Englishes, but also moving from the English to the scientific study of language, we have looked at a few concepts that were relevant about linguistics. We have had a general introduction to the linguistics, and we looked into different main features of linguistics. After discussing linguistics, I have designed my last lecture according to your needs, because as it was a course of history of English language, I just wanted to wind it up with the language again towards the end, and we have actually looked at the functions of language today. That was very one major part that was remaining yet. I hope that you have really enjoyed this course. Although history of English language seems quite boring, but still I have tried my level best to make it as much interesting as I can. I have been giving you examples and let's see that I hope that it would be really beneficial for you, not only theoretically but also practically. You have looked at some practical aspects. Wish you very good luck for your upcoming exams. Please take very good care of yourself. Don't forget to read, don't forget to study the things. Please go and buy the book, the Cambridge Encyclopedia of English Language. That is a very relevant book, and you can also find some other books that are written from Pakistani writers in the market. These are available, but I would prefer and I would ask you to please go through the material that I am giving you, because that is more authentic. And at all over course, I have taken helps from different sources. I'll be giving you the relevant material, the relevant sites, and I hope if you want to if you would like to read more, you can go through and you can consult those sites. And so with this, I would end on this note to please take very good care of yourself. Keep studying the things, keep working. Hard work is really a key to success. I would finish up. Please take very good care, and Allah Hafiz.